Hello and welcome to St Peter Mancroft, to those of you here and those watching online. I'm Fiona Haworth, the Associate Priest, and this is part of our series of live-streamed reflections from Mancroft. And if you're visiting the church, please do feel free to continue looking around. Over the night of the 27th of April 1942, more than 90 tons of bombs were dropped on Norwich, causing 67 deaths. This was a part of the Baedeker bombing raids, which in April and May 1942 targeted the cities of Norwich, York, Canterbury, Bath and Exeter. The name derives from Baedeker, a series of German tourist guidebooks, including detailed maps which were used to select targets for bombing. It comes from a comment from a spokesman for the German Foreign Office who is reported to have said on the 24th of April 1942, "We shall go out and bomb every building in Britain marked with 3 stars in the Baedeker Guide." These remarks effectively admitted the Germans were targeting cultural and historic targets in an attempt to destroy the morale of civilians. The raids were, however, largely ineffective, and although these and other cities were targeted intermittently until 1944, they resulted in unsustainable losses for little material gain. The Baedeker Raids were planned in response to the devastating increase in the effectiveness of the Royal Air Force's bombing of civilian targets in Germany. A month before the raid over Norwich, the RAF had bombed the German city of Lübeck, causing significant destruction. Although a port and at the site of several shipyards, Lübeck was a historic city, a founding member and capital of the Hanseatic League, a centre of culture, a medieval city dominated by 7 churches and many timber-framed buildings. Over 400 tons of bombs were dropped on Lübeck, including 25,000 incendiary devices, which either destroyed or inflicted varying degrees of damage to 2/3 of the building in the city. More than 15,000 people lost their homes. Churchill was congratulated on the success of the bombing of Lübeck by Stalin, who thought that the merciless attacks would cause severe damage to German public morale. We rightly remember the Baedeker Raids, but we seldom remember the impact of Allied actions in the Second World War. Some years ago, I visited the German city of Magdeburg. Worcester, where I lived at the time, was twinned with the city. The Diocese of Worcester had strong links with the churches of Magdeburg, and I was invited to take part in a pilgrimage there to look at issues of peace and justice. There were representatives from American, Swedish and Finnish churches, in addition to us and our German hosts. It was a moving and thought-provoking time. Magdeburg was founded by Charlemagne in 805. It has the unfortunate distinction of having been destroyed twice in its 1200-year history. The Catholic League sacked Magdeburg in 1631, resulting in the death of 25,000 non-combatants, the largest loss during the 30 Years' War. The Allies bombed the rebuilt city in 1945, destroying much of it. Magdeburg was in East Germany after the war, and seeing the ancient cathedral, which did survive the bombing, surrounded by brutalist Soviet-style buildings was oddly jarring. It was the first time that I had been confronted with the effect of Allied actions in the Second World War, and it was a discomforting experience. I have visited Coventry and seen the ruins of the old cathedral, but it felt as if the legacy of the war was more apparent in Germany than here. Walking around Magdeburg, we came across Stolperstein stones, or stumbling stones, brass cobbles inserted into the streets to memorialize the mostly Jewish people who were killed in the Holocaust. We laid flowers by the stones, roses placed on city streets, outside shops, and the site of the destroyed synagogue. Each stone, and there are now more than 70,000 in Germany and other European countries, has an inscription which begins, "Here lived," followed by the victim's name, date of birth, and fate, internment, suicide, exile, or in the vast majority of cases, deportation and murder. They are all handmade, no more than 10 centimetres square, and are placed close to the last known freely chosen residence of the person remembered. The artist, Günther Demnig, has placed most of them himself, and together they form the largest decentralised monument in the world. Whilst not everyone supports the Stolperstein, I found them to be a moving memorial. To read the inscriptions requires us to bend down, a way of honouring the dead and paying attention to the stories that have been hidden. Their placement in the neighbourhoods where people once lived is a direct counter to the attempt to erase their names from history. These simple memorials are a powerful example of what art can do. Art can bring us up short, cause us to pause in the busyness of our days and reflect on wider stories, more overarching themes. The emergence of recognisably modern humans is linked to the emergence of art, the decorative items made by hunter-gatherers in Paleolithic Europe and East Asia some 40,000 years ago. These include rock and cave painting, jewellery, drawing, carving, engraving, and sculpture in clay, bone, antler, stone, and ivory. Some, like the Venus figurines, are famous, and musical instruments similar to flutes have also been found. Confronted by these works of art, we recognise something of ourselves in them, however mysterious. Their meaning is lost to us in the passage of time, but they have significance. Art, music, the architecture that surrounds us, the books we read, the songs we sing, all shape us in indefinable ways and contribute to our sense of identity, our sense of belonging. And perhaps this is why cultural artifacts are so often attacked in war. It is a way of attacking people's understanding of themselves and their place in the world. Similarly, suppressing the culture and language of others is an aggressive act, an attempt to erase a people's history. This is part of our own history. Before the 16th century, most of the people of Wales spoke only Welsh. When Henry VIII enacted the Act of Union in 1536 to 1542, which incorporated Wales into England, he also banned Welsh speakers from public office and declared English the official language of Wales. In 1967, immediately following the Six-Day War, the State of Israel banned the Palestinian flag in the occupied Gaza Strip and West Bank, and a later 1980 law forbid the work of political significance, artwork of political significance, using the colours of the Palestinian flag, and Palestinians were arrested for displaying such artwork. During the time of Imperial Russia, Russification of Ukrainian, Polish, Lithuanian and Belarusians were suppressed. Use of the local languages in public places or schools was banned. Now, in Ukraine, the United Nations Cultural Agency has confirmed that at least 53 historic sites, religious buildings, and museums, including the Holocaust Memorial, have sustained damage during Russia's invasion. The loss of cultural and artistic artifacts saddens us and lessens us. The fire at Notre Dame in Paris brought a range of responses from world leaders, all expressing their sorrow and shock. President Macron said, "Like all of my fellow citizens, I am sad to see this part of us burn tonight." Barack Obama wrote, "Notre Dame is one of the world's great treasures, and we're thinking of the people of France in your time of grief. It's in our nature to mourn when we see history lost, but it's also in our nature to rebuild for tomorrow as strong as we can." Notre Dame is being rebuilt. After initially suggesting that the rebuilding might open the possibility of a new design, Notre Dame is now being restored with an oak-built replica of the medieval spire to complete the work. Italy has already offered to rebuild Mariupol's theatre. Italy's culture minister has said, "The theatres of all nations belong to humanity." Not all works of art, not all culture can be restored. Languages lost cannot be revived as living languages. Books and paintings burned are gone. To attack the culture, history, and language of a people is to threaten their identity, and neglecting to properly fund the arts is to limit and reduce human experience. To be creative is to bear the image of God in the world. The creative gifts allow us to imagine ourselves as more than we thought we could possibly be. Loving God, who made the world and all that is in it, bless us with wisdom to see your beauty in the arts and cultures that carry the stories of your children. Help us to respect and honour our differences, and to learn humility through the rich diversity that you have called into being. We ask this through Jesus Christ. Amen.